All right. Where are you recording from, by the way?
In my office at home.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
So we have Michael Patrick Jinx on today. Mike, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And give you a little background. Jinx, go by Jinx. Him and I have been in the affiliate marketing space and known each other for many years now. I think 7 or 8 years. And yeah, we see each other at the networking events and everything. Do you happen to be going to the Las Vegas one? I missed your answer on that. And we froze. I have no sound.
Yeah, I see you frozen on my side. That was strange.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Is it me or is it you think?
Oh, no.
I have full bars. Sorry.
Yeah, I have.
All right. Hopefully this won't happen again.
As well. Let me see. Mine's just connected to my home one. I can test it on like my LTE connection at home, but I have full bars too. I don't want it to. There was one other time that yours froze up on my side, like as we were talking, so maybe it would.
Shit. I wish it told us like who it was when it happens.
Yeah. Let me run it off my. Let me run it off LTE connection, I guess, and see, but. All right, well, let me try it from that and see if it. It was weird because I was just running it from my home connection, so that's strange.
That's okay. We'll see what's up. So, all right, to go back, we have. All right, so we'll just start over from the beginning.
There you go.
Yeah, this is. So, Jinx, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This series has been a lot of fun for me so far, and I'm excited to talk to you about yourself and your family and how you make things work. To give people some background, we have been in affiliate marketing together. We've known each other in business for 8-9 years now, and I won't go too much into the history, but I guess I'll just ask you, tell the audience where you live, how long you've been married, how many kids you have, and what is a profession that you are working on now.
Yeah, I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. My wife and I have now been married for 15 and a half years. We have 3 kids, a 13-year-old boy and twin girls that just barely turned 11 last week. I have the industry that you were talking about, where we met in the affiliate marketing industry. I started a company with 3 other partners called Cash Network, built that up over the last 7-8 years and have done, really huge amounts of revenue through that company. And while I do still love and enjoy and, still actively manage that company, I've found so much kind of happiness and just, I don't know, a lot more peace in moving to what I'm doing now, which is trying to, doing podcasting. I'm writing 2 different books, creating a coaching program, and just, trying to kind of stay in a happier mindset mostly. I think for so long I was willing to put my nose to the floor and just grind and go as hard as I could. And I reached a point, within the last few years where happiness became a lot more important than kind of money or whatever I was after before.
Now, do you think that that's awesome and interesting? Do you think that you made that shift because you already made money, or do you think that you would have, if you weren't making a good amount of money, you would have kept putting your nose and keep grinding and keep just going towards that? You know what I mean? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, honestly, that's an amazing question. I was just actually talking to a friend about that last night, and she was even saying, she was talking to me about the message I'm delivering and whether or not it can also be delivered to people who are in that state where, they have to work fully for money. And, for me, I am very fortunate that the life that I was able to create through, this company and through that grind has now provided an ability for me to go out and do this. And even you and I were just talking right before the session about how nice it is to not necessarily have to work. You think about the concept of money right now as much as building it exactly the way that you want to. And I think there's so much value in being able to do that. So for me personally, like, no, I don't think I could have done that. But I do think that the message itself, I think that, what I'm trying to preach in terms of self work and, just figuring out everything internal before you start putting energy external. I do think it could, I do think it is something that, could be done kind of at any level. It's just what amount of level are you able to give? Like, I
Yeah.
tell people to really just focus any additional time they have on any kind of like creative endeavor that they want to do, whether that's, whatever. I mean, there's so many possibilities of things that you can do. What I found, especially in the past, is that I used to say, like, I am just so damn busy. Like, I have, there is no way I can fit anything else on my schedule. But, at the same time, like, I was watching, an hour or so worth of TV a day, but it was almost a way to like deaden my mind and to like clear my stress. And so because I was so stressed out, I needed activities that I could kind of like, kill it and just kind of sit back and relax where now I'm actually truly freaking busy because I'm happy and I don't have that stress like over my head continuously. I don't have the anxiety, the worry. And so I can use whatever free time I want to either be with my kids, be with my wife, go to the gym, but whatever I'm doing is just like be present. It's like that for me is the key is be in the present moment, be within flow, kind of take life as it comes. And knowing that all the stuff I want to get done will get done if I'm like truly existing in the present moment without worrying about that future.
Yeah, I love that. And it sounds like awareness, just being aware of how you're spending your time and what you're doing and what actually is making you peaceful or happy or, at a better place mentally and emotionally,
Exactly.
right? More
Yep.
awareness. How do you create, when did you first create that awareness? How did you do it? What was that? What was there?
For
What
me, it was
process? Yeah. Did I freeze? I'm sorry. Did I
yeah,
freeze or
no,
something?
it's okay. I think
Okay.
just the awareness of kind of when that first started.
Yeah. When did you start like making that shift? And how did, how were there practices you put in place? Did you go somewhere? Did you do something,
So
reading
for me, it
something?
all started with reading the book The Surrender Experiment by
There we go.
Michael, which is incredible and basically just tries to allow you to operate from that state of present and from that state of peace and knowing that like whatever happens, whatever is going to happen. And so it's just, how much energy, how much anxiety, how much worry are you going to be willing to put, towards future events that like are going to be beyond your control. And the surrender experiment ultimately led us to Burning Man in 2017. And that was really, I remember coming back from that and like coming back into reality was so difficult. And, it was right during like the crypto boom. It was, I was able to, at that time, like I am very fortunate that I had some amazing partners that allowed me to basically take a 4 month sabbatical and, just hop out of Cash Network for a moment. I had kind of been, I'd say, the primary managing like day-to-day operations partner, and all of us partners had multiple different projects we'd always been working on, but I was the one that for that first 6 years or so, just always day to day, easily working 80 plus hours a week. And, it was very stressful. And so they allowed me to kind of step away from that. And I was able to kind of regroup, settle settle everything down a little bit and come back and just work on projects from that point. And then kind of from that point on, this last Burning Man was kind of the major shift. Like I had gone out there, I'd really been getting comfortable in the psychedelic space, and for me, I went out there with that purpose and was able to kind of gain so much clarity on kind of my own happiness and what I needed to do to move on. And for me, that's when I realized out there. My wife had told me at some point, while I had been rambling nonstop for 8 or 10 hours about just the beauty of life and the beauty of everything. And she was like, "You really need to write a book." And I was like, "That's it. Like, you're right." And it just seemed like from that moment, it was just like, it was all gone. It was like, oh, whatever happens here happens. Whatever happens with Cash Network happens. Like, whatever happens to me, it happens. But like, I knew at that point that not necessarily the book itself, but that delivering the message in whatever way possible. And that's just where this course has taken me over the last 5 months since then.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, man. But at the same time, I've never been happier in my life, and
Yeah.
so it's just to be able to that I honestly I didn't know existed. Like it's just very different.
Yeah, okay, if you can remember beforehand, like what was one of the biggest or a couple of biggest struggles you were having, not just inside yourself, but as a parent, as a husband, some stuff that you and your partner talked about, or what were some of the struggles that you had before, and have you kind of noticed them kind of subside a little bit based on how you've been acting and everything?
So it's really interesting though. The biggest one with my spouse was always me being connected to my phone. And so, like as you know, I mean, like when we run these affiliate networks, they operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like we have affiliates, in Europe, Asia, Australia. I mean, every continent and almost every country. And so there would be plenty of times that those clients are hitting us up consistently, and there are plenty of emergency times that we have to hop on and be on our phone. And so I think for her, just seeing how disconnected I was, or maybe the better term is how connected I was to that, which then made her feel more disconnected from me, because that phone always had to seem like a priority one. And what's really interesting after kind of coming back from Burning Man is, if anything, I've been a little more even connected to my phone. But she knows like what I'm doing there. It's like she knows that it's like I'm writing down different thoughts that come to mind. I'm taking if there's a podcast subject that comes up, I want to write it down. But at the same time, now if I am engaged in conversation with people, if I am wherever I am in, like if we're in true conversation, my phone is always down. I never look at it anymore, because I know that, like, oh, I'll look at it when I come. Like it's pretty rare for me to have any kind of emergency that I would need to get to within an hour to 2 hours, because we've now built such a fantastic team that has kind of been able to take a lot of these stresses away from us, and not have to have us be the active emergency people. And in terms of my kids, the biggest thing I noticed was just my willingness to give them time. And again, like I said, if we were working 70 to 80 hours a week, giving them even it seemed like a chore to even give them 30, 45 minutes a day, because of how busy I was. And then the times when I'm at home, I want to de-stress, I want to relax. It's like home became the place where, okay, I'm not having to do as much work when I'm in the office. And so I would want to be laying down, taking a nap, watching some TV, where it's like that. I mean, that is the time now to spend with them. And so, and also what I've realized, I even realized this with my parents, these like 5 to 15 minute visits where you are like truly connective, and you are truly connecting with either your kids, your spouse, your parents, like those go such a long way. Like I always thought that I had to give my kids hours of time, or I'd have to take them to do an activity, or something like that. And even my parents, I used to feel like it was such a chore to go spend time with them, or I'd take them out to dinner and it would take so long, where now I just hop over and I go see them, and I sit in their house for 10 or 15 minutes and quickly catch up and tell them, hey, I got to get back to something else. And with the kids, giving them actually dedicated time, as opposed to just taking them to like a bounce house, or taking them to a place where you're not even really playing with them anyways, but you're just getting them out. Like, sitting down and playing a phone game with my son for 15 minutes, it's so much better, than just pawning it off essentially to a bounce house or something.
That's actually what you just ended with there is really cool. It's really interesting how you said that. And it makes me think about, all the activities that I put pressure on myself to bring them to, because I want to spend time with them. And then, the time that I have here at home, where I just pop out of here for 10 minutes and I go play a quick game with my daughter, and looking
Hmm.
her in the eye, like as I'm talking, like really connecting, right? Instead of thinking about other things, you feel it. So that's really
Yeah.
interesting you bringing that up. Like you feel that a lot more than bringing him to somewhere where you can see him having fun and jumping around and stuff. But when you have that like connection where you're even at 4 years old, it's a
Yep.
whole different story. And you relate that to your parents too. That's really cool. No one's ever said that before. That was a really
I
nice
like it.
perspective.
Awesome. I learned.
that was good. That was a good perspective, man. So since this is a series of men, I want to ask you, like, what are your thoughts about what does it mean to be a real man, and then you can also talk about the best and worst parts about being a male, your male role, I guess you could say.
Well, I think that's really adjusted for me. I think as I was young, I was really taught to be like I would be the one who had to take care of the family. Like I would be the one who had to take care of my parents when I got older. I would be the one who had to take care of my sister. I would be the provider. It was just, and that was instilled for me from a very, very young age. Like that was my role kind of as the male in the family. I was the lone son. And so I think with that came a lot of, for me taking control, like even in the relationship with my wife, like I have definitely been the one who, to this point until very recently, have made all the major decisions, like, I mean, even though, she would receive input in it, it became me to like do everything and I would take everything on. And so for so long, I kind of assumed that role of the man. And while I think that's so beautiful to do, I think at the same time, like what I'm realizing is how much I've missed out on just because of the assumptions and that control that I've taken. Like all of her value, my wife and I are so different. So I mean, we are like complete polar opposites, and that's why we work so well. But at the same time, I think for a long time, I almost looked at that not as a negative thing, but just as something that was like, some kind of like a hump that we had to get over, or something. It's just how different we were. We're in reality now. It's like I truly look at it, how beautiful it is that I can have someone that has a completely opposite point of view than I have, and can look at a situation in a completely different way than I do. And so, especially within the surrender, is just realizing all the stupid little things that we try and take control of that like don't need that control. Like, why do I need control even of what, place we go to eat every time, like just stupid stuff like that. And so, for me now, being a man, honestly, is being very in tune with, our feminine sides, working together with our spouse to determine things. I mean, we're talking about, a couple major shifts in our life at this point. And, I had told her, I'm like, I'm ready to lay this entirely on you. Like, if you have a strong premonition one way or the other, to me, I don't at the moment. And so if she would kind of like to take control on that, I want to let her. And so, my evolution, I think, of what I believe that man needed to be was just that strong, always provider. And while I did that really well, and while, it's created a beautiful life for us, at the same time, I think I was really missing out on so much, and really missing out on so many different opportunities, because I believe that the man kind of had to do everything, that the man had to, ultimately provide all the money. My had this amazing night where some friends were over a few weeks back, and my wife is really like coming out of her shell, and we call her this kind of like evolving phoenix, and growing so much and becoming so strong. And my friend had said to me, like, what if Shannon just built this brand of hers and ended up being, the provider of the family, like income provider, and you just got to sit back and write your books. And I was like, oh my God, that's so amazing. I was like, how did I never think of that before? Like that thought had never crossed my mind. And yet in my moment, I was like, that is so awesome that like even the possibility of that exists, and I think it was so great to feel that, there are so many avenues beyond what we think of as the traditional male and the traditional male role. There's so many possibilities out there that, I'd rather just be open to them and kind of allow flow to decide, what things we do and what things we don't do, as opposed to me, exerting that continuous control like I used to.
Yeah, I love a lot of what you said. And the one part that I typed down here that you said, so, because, as we talk, I forget it.
Yeah.
So how much, you said how much I've missed out on by playing that assumption role.
Yeah.
And I literally, and this doesn't happen too often, I got some chills on my body as you said that, because it resonated so well with myself too.
Yeah.
Assuming that purchase should be fine with, or assuming that decision of getting this, and then what'll happen is, and tell me if this makes sense. She'll say something. This is in the past. She would say something to me about it, and then I would almost not hear, like reject it, like, oh, but it's fine, it's okay. Like I took like I handled it. I understand, but it's fine, right? Where instead of, that's the assumption, that's assuming I never, just that's really
Yeah,
good. And it's hard.
I used to always say to her, like, look, I know I don't make every decision right, but like I really think a lot about the things that I'm doing, and I put a lot of thought, and I'm very deliberate in the decisions that I make and the things I do, and because of that, I make a lot of right decisions. And so there were plenty of times when I'm like, I'm just want you to trust me because like I am smart, like I know what I'm doing. I've brought us to this point, and so the times that kind of there were that disagreement, it was kind of like, look at the history, like look at what I've done. Like I know I don't make every decision correct, but at the
Right.
same time, I do a really good job. And so, but at this, like now looking back at those, it's like, man, like what could we have been potentially missed on because we were caught up in that ego. We are in that ego of like, I do it my way, and I do it a good job. And yet maybe there are like a lot of missed opportunities that happen because of that unwillingness to kind of look past ourselves,
You're hitting the nail on the head, man. And there's no greater feeling, Jinx. I mean, there are greater feelings, but it's a really great feeling when you are making decisions together and you're communicating rather than talking to each other. You're
Yeah.
talking like with each other
Yeah.
about certain things, whether it's emotions or a decision in the house or your kids or whatever. You know, that was good. I like that.
Yeah, I think the biggest maybe the biggest thing that kind of has changed in communication is that I think, and what I see in a lot of people, like in the failure to communicate, is they are already ready in a response to like whatever that person's saying. So that doesn't mean they're really listening. That means they're prepping what they're going to say. It's just basically like talking to each other as opposed to really trying to engage and listen to what that other person's saying. Because I often find while the what matters of what a person's saying, it's often the why that's like the true issue. Like especially if you are in conflict, sometimes those what's like what a person's saying just comes out, and it's not necessarily like intended to come out that way. I'm a little more deliberate with my words, and so I focus the words that I'm going to say. And but people that you speak to that may be highly emotional, sometimes stuff just comes out, and it may not be exactly what they mean, and so you really have to look at the why. Like, why is the person saying this as opposed to exactly what they're saying?
Yeah, that's again, that's like having awareness and seeing it. I love that. Let me take a tangent with a question here. Being a little vulnerable, like what would you say are some of your insecurities or an insecurity that you have that you've noticed? I mean, you're pretty aware, so I think you would understand. And if you feel like I mean, you got to have something, right? But maybe you can even compare to how maybe what they were before to how they are now based on the transformation.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, my biggest insecurity, which I'm really working to conquer, like through kind of working through my own traumas and help using others to kind of work through these deep rooted traumas, is am I enough? Like can I do everything that I want to do? And I've always had really big visions. I've always had really big ambitions. I'm rarely the person to write down specific goals and need that kind of motivation. Like I am generally a super motivated person, but I don't think I realized until I was trying to go out on my own, like how much doubt was kind of like still laying on me, and how much doubt was still on my mind. Because like it's the times when I was feeling good, I'm crushing everything, I'm writing a lot, I'm getting content out. And then there were periods of time coming back where I would have a week or 2 weeks of just like nothing, like no content creation. And during those periods of doubt, like I get into this like guilt and shame vortex of where I just start laying like like this consistent, oh, what, you didn't do work yesterday, and then I feel bad today, and then it's like, wow, you haven't done work for 2 days, like, and then you just feel bad the third day. And with those along comes that thought of like, wow, can I really do what I think I can do? And so these are things I talk about one episode on my podcast where I unlocked my own trauma. Like my one of my first traumas that was unlocked, I used a facilitator, and she was really helped me to unlock this major trauma that I had no idea I was holding back. And so one day I started thinking about my own doubt, and I came back to this trauma in my life, like one of the first times that I ever remember doubting myself. And using those same techniques that facilitator used, I was basically able to walk through that trauma and look at it in a different way, and really understand it, and look at it that no, it's not that you aren't enough. It's not that you couldn't do it. It's just that you weren't prepared. Like I had this time where I failed failed this third grade science fair. And when I look at it now and look back at it, it's like, oh, I remember running to my mom the night before, like, oh my gosh, I've completely forgotten about this. And, she put together this beautiful art project for me. And so, of course, I failed the science fair because it had nothing to do with science, but at the same time, I look at it now and I'm like, oh, I was just totally unprepared. Like, of course, I could do it. I was a third grader going against sixth and fifth graders in this, school science fair. And yet I was laughed at, I was mocked. Even the teacher was like, failed me that was in it. And so, I didn't realize that had become a major doubt trauma for me. And so being able to now look at it and walk myself through it and speak out loud to myself. I mean, since then, that was the beginning of the year. And since then, I've honestly felt like on fire. I still get these little bits of doubt that pop up, but I just know that, hey, I just need to kind of start working through these traumas and ultimately, imagine a mind that if you can remove all insecurity, if you can remove all doubt, like, wow, I mean, God, it's just kind of like your options are limitless. You can literally do whatever you want at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. That's finding that moment back in time is so interesting to hear, and then it actually, as you're saying it, I'm listening to you, and then it makes me think, oh, okay, this happened to me. This might be the reason why I'm like that. As you're saying it, so I can picture the listeners right now doing the same exact thing. And then you were
Honestly,
able to.
one of my major focuses is on trauma and on resolving trauma. And if we can think back to any negative emotion that we've ever had, like we should have no negative emotion. Like let's look back to every experience, find some way to turn it, find some way to empathize with what we were going through, what other people were going through. And if we're essentially turning all of those, any possible negative thought we've had in our life into a positive and realizing what that moment has done for us now. I mean, we are simply at this point a result of a lifetime of traumas and a lifetime of patterns that we've created. And so,
Right.
Being able to now look back and unlock the things that don't serve us anymore. I mean, wow, we're just creating a life for us that's kind of unstoppable.
Yeah, you said we shouldn't have. I mean, do you really believe like negative emotions like jealousy, envy, anger? I mean, you said we should never have those. I mean, do you really believe like they should just be non-existent?
No, I mean, the way that we look at it in the past, like I do my best to like control my jealousies. I do my best to control my angers, but oftentimes they still get the better of me. But I
Yeah.
think what we can do is look at that and even look at those times and, say it's the quicker that we're able to resolve ourselves from those times, the quicker,
Okay. Beautiful.
if we do have that jealous moment, how long does it take us to be aware of that moment and then go fix that moment, like with our spouse, what I mean? And I think for us, like, I don't know how unique this is to the other people you've talked to, but my wife and I are actually in an open relationship. And so because of that, I mean, we face especially jealousy and other things like way more than what other people would be willing to do.
Dude, now I have to talk to you for another half hour. Now that our half hour is almost up, now I have to talk to you. You just opened up
that was
another
a teaser. That was a teaser to get me back.
No, I definitely want to have you on a regular episode, 100%. Now, especially you having a podcast, writing a book, being an entrepreneur and going through all this, and then an open relationship. You have to be really mindful and open communication, clarity, right? With that. So I would love to talk more. And that's a good teaser for anybody listening to this episode. We'll have Michael Patrick Jinx back on for a full hour, and we'll talk about that and some other things. How is, I guess what I want to ask you is now, what would you want to ask? This is how I end every podcast. So I'll just ask you because I'm interested. If you can go back and say something to your 18-year-old self, give them some words of wisdom or whatever you want to say, and you would listen, your 18-year-old self would listen, what would you say?
I mean, is that other than tell them to buy Bitcoin, when
Right.
it's
Besides,
$6
yeah.
or whatever, or other than that?
Right. Financial advice.
I would, honestly, I would really urge that person to just fully be present and fully enjoy the moment, because that's what I'm trying to like instill in my kids. They have lofty ambitions at this point, and, I am not going to be the one to tell them that those things are not going to happen. And so, I think what I would want is just do whatever it takes to be happy. Like follow your happiness, and even if that resulted in a completely different life than it did now, that's okay because like I would have been able to exist in that present, exist in that moment, be happy with that. Who knows what would have happened? I mean,
Right.
everything would probably be entirely different, but at the same time, everything would be in the way that it kind of needed to be, or what the universe wanted it to be for me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, of course, any advice we give to our 18-year-old self and they listened, you'd have a whole different life, right? But that's it's
Yep.
just a really cool question. I like to hear what people would say about that.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and what I'll keep this going a little bit more because I want to ask a few more questions. And I look over at my question sheet because um I was just going to ask you something, but you start talking and you say such good things, I get lost in thought.
Hey, you too.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about, did you like, it was the time that did you get to spend, you said you were working a lot back and, before this, again, this transformation, when you just kind of let things be more than like grinding all the time.
Yep.
Were you able to go to your kids' events and their stuff back then too?
Yeah, we did, but I think what it kind of stopped me from doing was even pushing them into like further maybe events and other stuff like that. And so yes, like all my kids played some level of sports, but never really more than just like the Saturday sports or something that we would then go to. But I think maybe it didn't allow me the time. Like my son's a big basketball fan and really loves basketball, and honestly, he's an incredible golfer. That was one thing I
Oh, cool.
always did try and push him into because he's been golfing since he was 4, and he's
Nice.
so good. But it was just never something that was a passion. But yeah, I mean, I think it just maybe didn't allow me to help them find their passions at an earlier age, and it kind of allowed me to be more of a standby parent who was there to support whatever decisions they were making, but not really like kind of helping them with a bunch more decisions or kind of have a better option of choices.
Yeah, it's listening to you and trying to think of myself too, like selfishness comes into mind a lot, just
Yeah,
doing it for my own good, a
sure.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if your partner ever called you out for that in the past, but I got called out a lot for being selfish
I don't think so, but I can call myself out for that for sure. I mean, I was a super self. I mean, I still am. I tell people like I think you have to have this like 50.0001% that you like go for yourself first before like you honor your own happiness before you can truly honor and respect someone else's happiness. And so I'm
100%.
still that little selfish at this point, but that number was definitely bigger in the past. Especially what we were talking about earlier, where I'd said I make a lot of good decisions, so just trust me. And so it's like, that's a very selfish, like, I know what I'm doing type statement.
Yeah. And that's awesome. And for anyone listening, I mean, how long have you mentioned Burning Man in 2017 and a little bit before that? That's kind of when you started really making this transition, right?
Yeah,
And view
correct.
in different perspective in life. So that's a couple, 2.5 years. Have you realized that you kind of, and this is almost a selfish question because I'm kind of figuring that out, where you went through like different patterns, almost like in the beginning, you were very peaceful and relaxed, and maybe you're like, well, this isn't exactly how I want to be, I need to figure out a little bit more of who I am. And did you kind of go through these different phases a little bit over the last 2.5 years, so you're now figuring out who you really are?
Yeah, honestly, after that first Burning Man, I really just saw, I think I just saw a life beyond what I was currently doing. And at that time, I really had no idea how to connect to that life. Like once we came back, it was just like I had no idea how to connect to that life of not caring as much or just that. And so I don't even know that I really learned that much. I mean, truly, my primary transition has been the last 5 months. And
Mm,
I remember
interesting.
in July, it was our anniversary, our 15th anniversary. I have a beautiful vacation home down in Moab, which is an amazing place. If you ever come out, you can come use it. But I remember being down there and we had done some mushrooms that night. And I was just like, we're working through, I was telling her like, man, life is about to be really hard. Like I'm dealing with a lot of things on the work side. There's a lot of like major things that are coming up, and life is about to be extremely hard. And I was, just kind of setting it up for her. And then yet, 4 weeks later, I go to that Burning Man of that year and I come back and I'm like, whatever happens, happens, you know. And I think what people don't understand is I'm not saying like, oh, you start forgetting about what's behind you, or you stop really working in what you're doing. Like, it's not that at all. If anything, I'm still putting, as much equal time in the Cash Network as I was before, but I'm just doing it with a more focused purpose, and I'm doing it without worrying like, hey, whatever happens here happens. Like, oh, if we lose this client, okay, so be it. We lose that client, we figure it out, we move on,
Right.
without sitting there worrying about what it's going to be. So, while I was able to kind of like see that piece, see that life beyond my chaotic life 2.5 years ago. My primary shift has been since September of 2019, and my wife really credits me too. She's like, I have no idea how you can flip the switch like that. How are you able to kind of just change it? And while it does seem like I do that, it's because I am a thinker. And even over those 2.5 years, it's like, what have I been missing? Like, what did I see there that I'm not able to replicate at home? And I used to always remember talking about, like, the experiences I'd have with people, or the moments I'd have with people, and then it's like come back to reality. And it's like, that was often my question, is like, why can't I exist in that same space? Like, why can't I do that? And I don't think I really realized it's all here. Like, it's all in my head.
All
Like,
in your head.
I
Yeah.
can exist in that same space if I'm willing to, be aware of it, and I'm willing to do the work necessary to push past the stress, to push past the anxiety. And I think for so long I just had no idea really how that worked, and I'm still learning it. I mean, I'm still really learning how to operate. And a big thing I've learned recently is basically sometimes I'll still get caught up here, and if I hit those points of I'm just not feeling anything, I'm not feeling content, I realize like I'm up here in my head and I need to shift to my heart. So for me, the biggest thing I try and do is what I say, to remain in heart space all the time. And to be in heart space, it's be fully present, be fully aware in the moment, not be concentrating on what's happening elsewhere, because that's where that mind comes in. That's where that anxiousness, that stress, that anxiety comes in.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where that like thinking about what you want to say next before actually listening to somebody comes into it, right?
Yeah,
I
like,
totally. If you're, yeah,
I was going to say, trust your intuition. Like, our minds are absorbing everything all the
yeah,
time anyways. Like, for us to have to tell ourselves like, oh, this is what I want to say, or this is, I want to remember this for later. Like, our mind does truly remember that at this point. If we're operating in that heart space, we're operating in an intuitive space, knowing that as the things will come, that as we talk about something, that will come to us.
yeah. That's beautiful, man. Thanks, thanks,
Thank
Jinx.
you.
Appreciate you, dude.
Yeah, thank you so
Thanks
much,
for
man.
being vulnerable.
Yeah, please. Thank you. I love it.